Nostalgia has been a pretty big pull in media over the last few years. When everything is primed for a reboot or a sequel, studios have spent so much time wondering whether or not they could, they failed to probably consider whether or not they even should. While some of these legacy sequels have paid dividends, as with Spider-Man No Way Home, unfortunately, we are gifted with the totally self-aware, meta to a fault, dead on arrival, Matrix Resurrections. To get into why I think this movie failed to live up to the promise of the franchise, or even just the promise of a legitimate Matrix sequel, we really need to talk about spoilers. I had to go into a full spoiler deep dive with Spider-Man to explain why I liked it so much. And as such, in order to explain my disappointment with the Matrix, I need to dive into spoilers here as well. So ye be warned. Spoilers. I'll be discussing spoilers. First of all, we state the obvious. The original Matrix is a groundbreaking cyberpunk action film. It literally changed everything about action movies. The way they looked, the way they were shot, the way they were cast. The first Matrix movie was nearly flawless. A perfect shot of adrenaline, a philosophical, brainy, kung fu action movie that was never too smart for its own good. And then we got the sequels. But you know, there was still some amazing moments in those films. The freeway chase, the burly brawl. I even liked the big fight in the rain at the end of the third film. There was some iconic imagery, some amazing action, all wrapped around a suitably epic cyberpunk story. And then we have The Matrix Resurrections. A soulless, hollow embarrassment of a cash grab standing on the shoulders of titans and expecting to reach those same heights. This movie was pure nostalgia bait that felt shockingly unlike a Matrix movie. It felt like a movie from a completely different franchise. We know what a Matrix movie looks like, what a Matrix movie sounds like. They literally developed the technology needed in order to service the vision across the original trilogy. They paid homage and reverence to the Hong Kong action films that preceded them. So how do you go from the vision and creative driving force at the heart of the original Matrix series to whatever they were doing here? Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss return as Neo and Trinity, respectively. Sorta. The movie begins by re-showing the first scene from the first Matrix movie, only shot worse, with different actors, which give you the same feeling you got when you were watching the Lion King remake. The same, just worse. Eventually we learn that Neo is living an ordinary life as the guy who created a video game trilogy called, wait for it, The Matrix, and his publishers are forcing him to create a new sequel, which he is not on board with doing. This actually feels like the most epic of epic trolls by Lana Wachowski, intentional or not, who seems to want to make a comment on the ongoing trend of creating cash grab sequels and harvesting the corpses of IPs for diminishing returns. It's like they want their cake and eat it too. I'm sure it probably felt clever in the writing stage, but instead it just feels awkward, and it really took me out of the film. Eventually, Neo is rescued by the only interesting character outside of Neo and Trinity, Jessica Henwick's Bugs, and she's the one who figures out that Neo and Trinity have been trapped in the Matrix by the machines, and it's their connection that is powering the heart of the Matrix 2.0. I can see some glimmers of some good ideas in there. I really like the idea of the machines imprisoning Neo and Trinity. I like the general premise that Neo was trying to convince Trinity that she was living in a simulated world. Bugs, the new character, was a visually interesting and capable character herself. They even bring back Jada Pinkett Smith's Niobe, and reveals that some of the machines are now working with humankind, setting up a sort of civil war. All of this is kinda great, so why did I hate it so much? Firstly, the meta-commentary, and even just the minor variations to the overall aesthetic of the Matrix. We know what a Matrix movie looks like. We know what it sounds like. It felt tonally disconnected from the established norm, and not in a unique or interesting way. They even try and do a play on bullet time, which I found really awful, especially in comparison to how it looked in the original series, which felt superior despite coming out well over 20 years ago. Secondly, it was a big missed opportunity not bringing back Lawrence Fishburne as Morpheus or Hugo Weaving as Smith. I know Weaving had scheduling conflicts, but not having either of those actors, whose appearances would have greatly contributed to the overall legitimacy of this film, felt suspicious and odd, especially since their characters, in a roundabout way, were prominent features of this film. And what really sucks? Those new actors were actually quite good. I like Johnathan Groff as the new Smith, playing him as a wild card just as keen to cross off Neo as he is to take out the new big bad. Also, Neil Patrick Harris was in the film, playing the least convincing villain since Neil Patrick Harris trying to convince the audience of How I Met Your Mother that his character in that wasn't a completely insufferable bastard. This was epic miscasting of a colossal scale. In the overall scheme of things, it pales in comparison to the fundamental flaw at the heart of this film and why it fails for me. The original Matrix was a groundbreaking visual marvel, a perfect marriage of cutting-edge computer effects and martial arts. This movie would have you believe that the Matrix, at least the original Matrix, is all about Neo and Trinity's love for one another. But honestly, when people remember the original film, which is what this movie goes out of its way to do, relentlessly, they remember the kung fu fights and the mind-bending bullet time. This movie has exactly none of that. Not one single new idea to justify its existence. The action, which was so incredible in the first movie, is shot fast, shot shaky, and is nearly incomprehensible. The fight choreography in the original, which was slick, dynamic, and treated the camera and viewer as an active participant, here is just plain lazy and generic. For what little there is of it, anyways. I'm struggling to recall one single memorable scene in this new Matrix. One scene that was interesting, or shot with some creative enthusiasm. It all just felt so by the numbers. This is not the same creative minds that created the original Matrix trilogy. And what really hurt, I feel, is that the potential was there. I complained about how the film is nothing but pure nostalgia bait. But I was there. Hook, line, and sinker for a new Matrix movie. I wanted to love this. I wanted to return to the world of the Matrix, the series which redefined action filmmaking for the new millennium. But The Matrix Resurrections is exactly what we all feared it would be. In fact, I think it's worse. Instead of feeling like a grand return to the movie which influenced an entire generation of filmmakers, we got a movie which felt like it was shot and released direct to video. The Matrix Resurrections was what happens worst case scenario when a creative isn't given structure or feedback to guide and shape their vision. Instead of a film series' triumphant return to cinema, we get a hallmark Matrix movie. A film that will sit comfortably on a streaming service, as a film most of us will forget about the moment we finish watching it. I think it's time. If Warner Brothers wants The Matrix to be a full-blown franchise again, it's time to take it out of the hands of the filmmakers who have nowhere left to take it. The original Matrix is still one of the greatest films of all time. The achievement of Lana and Lily Wachowski cannot be overstated there. But moving forward, it's time to bring in new filmmakers, new blood to steer the ship. I think it's time to bring in someone who has the vision that the Wachowskis themselves used to have when they created Neo and Trinity. Someone who can redefine the Matrix for a new generation. Overall, I give The Matrix a C-. Watch this only if you're a super fan of the original trilogy, and even then, maybe wait for streaming. At best, it homages the much better original films, and at worst, it insults people for what they like about the original films. I hope one day I can rewatch this film and pick up on something I missed. Something that clarifies what the intention of this film was. Something that shows me what this new Matrix was trying to say. As it stands, this movie was little more than a missed opportunity and a bitter disappointment. So what did you think of the new Matrix? Did you take the red pill and see something more than I did? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and as usual, stay tuned for more reviews coming soon. Later days.